Welcome to Black History Monday, the show that takes you on a journey through Black history to expose our contributions, as well as many racial massacres hidden from history. So sit back, free your mind, and follow me on this journey. The Jesse Washington story. This story, involving 17-year-old mentally unstable youth Jesse Washington, who was killed by another white mob on May 15, 1916, will send chills down the spine. This is very graphic, so be warned. It must be noted that white mobs could level any charge against a black man or woman and then have others accost him with just reason or otherwise. So in that spirit, between 1890 and 1920, the reports suggest approximately 3,000 African Americans were killed by lynch mobs, especially in the southern United States of Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, and Texas. Having been accused of the murder of Lucy Fryer, a 53-year-old white woman whom he served in her household, and was accused of violating her sexually, a mob could not let the justice system decide his fate. Rather, upon being declared guilty by an all-white jury, someone in the courtroom shouted, "Get that N-word." And with that, Washington's fate was sealed. The mob had gathered at the backstairs where jailers were escorting Washington. The account continues that a chain was thrown around his neck and then retrieved from the jailers. He was then hanged on a tree before some 10,000 Waco, Texas white people. James Allen, who created a BBC documentary, has encountered horrifying photos of lynched blacks in family albums of ordinary Southern families and revealed that thousands of postcards were made from Jesse Washington's lynching, beating, and setting on fire, where they were sold door to door, at markets, and at chemist stores in Waco.
James Allen has collected a photographic record of racial violence in the South. For the past 20 years, he's found horrifying pictures in the family albums of ordinary Southern homes. Many are postcards that were mass-produced as souvenirs.
Some of these images were printed in the tens of thousands and sold for a dime or $1 a piece. Some of the postcards tell you where to write and the discounts you'll get if you buy 1, 10, or 100. They were sold in drugstores and pharmacies. They were sold on the street. I purchased a photograph from a woman. The photographer sold them door to door. Her mother bought the image for $2. A murder that is of particular interest to me was of a 17-year-old boy by the name of Jesse Washington in Waco, Texas, in 1916. He was seriously mentally challenged. The wife of the farmer that he worked for was found dead. He was arrested. He was brought to trial. The trial took from 10 until 12. And when the jury came back at noon and found him guilty, someone in the courtroom, and it would have been anyone in the courtroom, screamed out, "Get that nigger." Then one of the worst and cruelest treatments of a human being began. Jess was kicked down out of the courthouse, down the back steps where a crowd of several hundred was waiting for him. They put a chain on his neck. There were 16,000 people crowding the street to watch this boy be tortured. Jess was tied to the chain over a branch of a tree. The fire was started. They raised Jess from the fire up into the air so that the crowd could see him. There were cheers, like at a football game, cheering the torturers on. When Jess tried to climb up the chains, hand by hand, they cut his fingers off one by one so that all he could do was slap at the chain. They lowered him back down in the fire. A man came up and castrated him. Another man kept a pole so that he couldn't crawl out of the fire. And time and again, they pulled him up to keep him from dying so that the crowd could be satisfied. Until he finally died.
Although lynching was regular against blacks, Fred Gildersleeve, a Waco-based professional photographer's photo of the ongoing acts, showed in gruesome detail the destruction of human life. The cheering at Washington's lynching and roasting was similar to that at a football game, he notes. When the poor youth attempted climbing up the tree, his fingers were cut off one by one. With a prepared bonfire below, he was dragged into the fire and then elevated on the tree to prevent immediate death. By that cruel process, Washington was roasted alive for 2 hours, much to the cheers of the spectators. A member from the crowd also cut off his member, and such was his fate till the boy breathed his last breath. After his death, his body was then taken to Robinson, Texas, which was the hometown of Fryer and a large African-American population. The charred and mangled body of Washington hung from a utility pole in front of a blacksmith shop until a McClellan County constable took his remains down and buried them. Washington's unclaimed remains were later buried in a local potter's field. The NAACP hired Elizabeth Freeman, a women's suffrage activist based in New York City, to investigate the lynching. She had traveled to Texas in late 1915 or early 1916 to help organize the suffrage movement and was already in Dallas for a statewide convention in early May. Freeman began her assignment in Waco soon after the lynching, posing as a journalist and attempting to interview people about the events. She found that most residents were reluctant to discuss the incident. She spoke with town officials and obtained pictures from the lynching from Gildersleeve, who was initially reluctant to provide them. Although she feared for her safety, she enjoyed the challenge of the investigation. When speaking with city leaders, Freeman convinced them that she planned to defend Waco against criticism when she returned to the North. Some journalists soon grew suspicious of her and warned residents not to talk to outsiders. Local African Americans, however, gave her a warm reception. Blues musician Sammy Price recorded a version of Hesitation Blues that referenced Washington's lynching. Price lived in Waco as a child, possibly at the time of Washington's death. Waco-based novelist Madison Cooper featured a lynching thought to be based on Washington's death as a key event in his 1952 novel, Saronia, Texas. Next week, Monday, we will continue on this journey as we walk through the doors of history. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Click the notification bell so you'll be notified when we upload new videos. Find The Awakening Frequency on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. Research is key. Always do your own research and never just listen to what people tell you. We are The Awakening Frequency. Out of the millions of potential subscribers, we just want to reach one so each one can teach one. Peace.